But first, James Sinclair poses the question, will the Linstead extension be built?
Some of you may have read in Felix last Friday the sensational article which stated that the Linstead extension might be scrapped after all. This, so it was said, because the college is missing a whole £150,000. In a moment, I'll be talking to Hugh Barrett, who, as president of Imperial College Union, has a very strong vested interest in the whole thing. But before that, we'll see what happened when we sent out James Miller and the Grey Society to evaluate what's been happening at Linstead Hall.
Well, we've come over to Linstead now to have a look at that famous extension. Now, for those of you who don't have a vantage point of seeing what exactly is going on behind those boards, we thought we'd bring you here to have a look. From the outside, you can see the boards, and originally there was a green sign up with the name Sunley on. That was taken down and has now been replaced by a sign with Imperial College of Science and Technology, Linstead Hall Extension. Well, is that all the work that has been carried out on the site so far? Well, from here it looks as if it is so. However, it has been reported that investigations have been made into the necessary foundations on top of the boiler house for the extension. Our judges are lined up, ready and waiting, and they're going to tell us what their marks are for the work which has been done so far. Judges, your marks, please. And they don't seem to be marking, they seem to be commenting. Thank you, judges.
That was James Miller taking a slightly sceptical look at the Linstead extension. Hugh Barrett is, of course, president of Imperial College Union, and so has a very strong vested interest in the Linstead extension as our representative. Hugh, to the best of your knowledge, is that £150,000 that Felix says is still not coming? Is it still missing?
Well, yes, it's missing. If I can just elucidate a little bit on what was said in Felix, and
sure, perhaps
for people who didn't see it. The original Linstead Hall scheme was going to cost about £500,000. That was the best reliable estimate that people had. And that would be paid for by £350,000 from the anonymous benefactor, plus about £50,000 from the University Grants Committee, who finance these sort of buildings, or part of them anyway.
Right.
And the rest would come from a thing called the Queensgate Trust, which is the some of the money the colleges got on trust, which it raised during the 60s specifically for student residence, and in fact was used at the end of the 60s to purchase student houses in Evelyn Gardens. And about £100,000, as I said, would come from that, and that would make up the £500,000 that was thought to be needed. What's turned out to be the case is that the cost is going to be over £700,000, and therefore the money in the money in the Queensgate Trust is limited to about £200,000. So therefore, you still have a gap of £150,000. What the college are going to do, they are going back to the anonymous donor and saying to him, look, the costs have escalated. When you gave us the £350,000, which was over 2 years ago, it was assumed that £350,000 would pay for the vast majority of an extension to Hall of Residence. As it turns out, it's going to cover just about half of it.
Is there really very much hope that the anonymous donor might feel so well disposed towards IC that he'd give yet more? Because he's already given quite a considerable amount.
It's totally an imponderable that nobody can answer. I mean, he's given not only £350,000 for this specific extension, but he also paid for the original Linstead Hall, and over the years has endowed several halls of residence throughout the University of London. So it's a question of how much money he's got and whether he's willing to spend it.
I understand.
What I can't answer.
Right. I understand you saw the rector actually quite recently. Does he sort of? What was his mood when you saw him? Does he place the blame somewhere, or?
Well, the problem is if you look at the gap of £150,000, and that gap would not be insuperable to the college. They could find the money somewhere. The only problem is that there is a complicating factor in that Evelyn Gardens, which is, you all know, is the student houses scheme. The original leases were purchased by the college for 20 years. All the houses were in 20-year leases. The college has recently, within the last 2 or 3 months, been offered a possibility of extending those leases for 70 years to a 70-year term.
And that they would naturally want to take up.
That obviously is something that would be very attractive. It would guarantee 400, 500 student places to the middle of next century, whereas on the present scheme, in the near 1988, there's a possibility we could lose all those places. So obviously that is a very attractive proposition. That requires a lot of money, though, to secure that lease.
From any possibility of building a...
So you're in a situation at the moment where you could say, OK, we'll scrimp and save in the college and provide 100 places in Linstead Hall, 70 places in Linstead Hall, and clear out all the Queensgate Trust money. Or you could say, right, we'll write Linstead Hall off as a bad job. I mean, we've poured bad money down there, let's not follow it with good money, so to speak, and then use the money that the college has got left to secure those houses in Evelyn Gardens for the next 70 years.
So they're really considering scrapping the Linstead Hall extension?
If the...
after all the hoo-ha?
Yeah, not only after all the hoo-ha, but also there's about £150,000 has already been spent on abortive architects' fees for the original scheme and the present scheme, and also in the preliminary works, which you've probably seen as you walk past the big sort of scaffolding.
See, of course, when one reads a headline like Linstead to be scrapped and Felix, one often thinks, well, you know, they're not really, I mean, it's sort of sensationalism.
Examination, shock,
yes, it's not really sensationalism at all, it seems to be very realistic.
My personal opinion is that if the anonymous donor doesn't come up with more money, then the college will say, no, that's it, we're not going to carry on with Linstead Hall, which means effectively not only no, we won't carry on with the extension to Linstead Hall, but no, there will be no more halls of residence of a similar type to Linstead and Southside built in Prince's Gardens in the foreseeable future.
Yes, which of course is a bit of a blow, because at one time there was a whole Northside development.
Well, I mean, there were going to be 1,500 students accommodated in Prince's Gardens in the original scheme.
So, in fact, the picture looks as gloomy as it was made out to be in Felix.
On Linstead, yes,
Friday.
yeah.
Well, anyway, thanks very much for coming along, Hugh, and in case we don't see you again, I hope you have a very happy marriage.
Well, I hope so too.
You negotiate Physics 3 after your year's break with every bit of success that you managed to negotiate Physics 1 and 2. Thanks very much for coming.
As many of you will know, the Linstead Hall extension was finally opened this year after over 2 years of planning.
Hello from the new Linstead Hall extension, now officially open. This extension is situated on the east side of Prince's Gardens, next to the existing Linstead Hall, and provides accommodation for 70 students, male and female, in single and double rooms. Andy Chain, you're Sub-Warden of Linstead Hall, based in the new extension, that's right, isn't it? Now, of course, we all know that Linstead Hall was originally built with money from an anonymous donor. What about the new part?
The funding is exactly the same. The anonymous benefactor supplied money about 4 years ago, and several plans were drawn up. The local residents had a great say in the final outcome of the planning stage, but finally the thing got completed, and here we are, moving students in.
Yeah, of course, it's quite different from the original Linstead, isn't it? It's not quite as high, and the rooms do have a different shape.
This is quite true. I believe that the exterior has a lot to do with the residents of the Mews. The window boxes are certainly one of their ideas. But interiorly it's different as well. This is on a corridor system rather than the staircases of the old Linstead, and we have double rooms now in this section.
Yes, how many students altogether will be living in the extension?
It's 70 students now. I think there are about 16 or so double rooms.
And some of these also are for women, I gather?
Yes, we've only got 5 women in the new extension at the moment, but in Linstead altogether now, this year, there are 25 women, which is rather a large improvement on...
Yes, quite. Well, the rooms are quite a different shape from the ones in Southside. How do you think how they compare with the Southside rooms?
Well, unfortunately, there's not a colossal amount of window space, so the rooms are quite dark, and I've found in my flat I've had to have electric light on most of the day, which is rather poor. I think if the rooms had been painted a darker colour, it would have been rather depressing.
Yeah, because the one advantage we note is that there are rather a lot more power sockets around, so you can run your hi-fi and all that stuff without having to go to multi-way adapter boxes.
Yes, finally they've realised that students can afford electrical appliances, and they've planned accordingly.